Hello, comic fans, here's Earl Grey. Today I have something really special for you. Gung Ho, a German comic series. I mean, we have lots of very talented folks over here, like everywhere else. But the opportunities to get your stuff published are pretty rare. So a very ambitious project like Gung Ho that took over 10 years to be created is quite an event, especially when it could be wrapped up successfully, like Gung Ho could be wrapped up very recently with Volume 5. And I want to sort of celebrate this event together with the artist Thomas von Kummant and the writer Benjamin von Eckartsberg, and they will join me in a sec in an interview. But just to give you an impression about what we will talk about, look at this very exceptional artwork here. The story is very interesting with very good character work, but what the series really makes so striking right from the first look is this artwork, very unique and exceptional combination of classic cartooning and an effectful use of computer graphics. It was collected in 5 European album-sized trades. Each one of them more than 80 pages. The last volume 5 even over 100 pages. So actually this is material almost worth of 10 European albums, and it came out in translations in Dutch, in French, of course, maybe in Spanish, for sure in American, in English, by the American publisher Ablaze, and we will talk about that as well. So let's start with the interview. So I'm very glad to have Benjamin von Eckartsberg, the writer of Gung Ho, on my channel, and Thomas von Kummant, the artist behind the stories. Please excuse our bad English. We will try as best as we can. Your comics, Gung Ho, are available in English as well by the publisher Ablaze, and we will talk about that later. But first, I want to know from you what, in your opinion, is Gung Ho all about? Can you give us some kind of summary, a short premise, a pitch, or something like that?
Well, the pitch is basically it's a sort of coming-of-age story in a post-apocalyptic world. So it's a mix between post-apocalyptic genre, teenage coming-of-age genre, and action-adventure, and a little bit of horror. So it's a wild mix.
Also drama, you could say.
Yes, that's yeah. But the focus of Gung Ho are the human characters, and the post-apocalyptic scenery is the backdrop of the story, which enhances the pressure on the people. It's a kind of a study of a small society in a danger zone, in a little village, walled with or guarded by walls, and with armed people on the walls to protect the people from a danger outside, which is a new species of wild predators hunting humans. So every move outside of the fortified village can get you killed, and if you go out, you should better be motorized and have weapons, and otherwise your chance of survival is very small. And but this is not a new threat to humanity. It's going on for a while, and our story takes part in a time where people are used to that, to living like that, and the focus on the teenagers who are brought up in these times and are forced to learn very early to handle these kind of dangers and to live after a strict set of rules set by the adults in order to protect them. But being teenagers with wild hormones going wild, and the whole brain is reconstructed, and of course they test the limits, and they're questioning the rules of the adults, and they have the first love also. It's a little bit of romance in there, but also it raises mainly the question about if you are young and you look at the world surrounding you, that you have to decide if you like what you see or if you go against it, if you live by the rules and trying to be part of the society, or if you going against the rules. So that's basically the setup.
Mm-hmm. I found the character work especially very stunning. I mean, all the teenagers, especially, and the conflict you mentioned between them and the adults. My favorite character, it's not the nicest one of them, but it's the most interesting one, is the guy called Holden. And because he always switches the sides multiple times, not to spoil anything, but or the other guy is the Japanese karate guy, which is very funny. And do you have some favorite characters that grew on you so much that it hurt a bit to let them go?
Well, yeah, for me, as I drew all the characters, of course, I have this group of teenagers around Archer and Zack, which are quite my favorites. But then also Tanaka, the Japanese guy, well, I love them all, of course, but this is the main group I like the most.
Mm.
I think Archer is one of my favorites because he's such a he's also not very nice in a way, but I think you quite like him, and he's the funniest. I think I have to do sometimes when I read the comic again or while working on it, and yeah, but I think Salim, the best friend of Zack, he's a kind of a sidekick, but I think he's the kind of guy I would hang out in real life, because he's the nicest one. He's the most normal one. He's not as fucked up like the others.
Yeah, it's really amazing to experience how all these characters have their distinct voice and yeah, way to behave in certain situations. And but the most striking about Gung Ho is, of course, the art of Thomas. And can you walk us through your very special way of cartooning? How did you do that?
So thanks very much. First, yes, as we decided to do this comic for the French market. We were looking on the market, and you see all these amazing artists. Everybody has a fantastic line artwork, and you know, they're very different types of line artwork. And I was thinking, okay, what can we do to make it special? And then I was thinking, okay, I lose the line totally, so I will work only with layers on each other's, you know, and with colors, no line. And so I developed this sort of cutout collage because the line, the work of the line is to make it graphically clear and to make it very to have a good readability. You need the line so the reader can see and can follow the story very easily. So I needed to preserve this graphic help to the reader. So I developed this cutout collage where you have very sharp silhouettes everywhere. Or you have the characters, of course, but also in the backgrounds and in the trees. If you look at them, all is cut out very, very hard, and then you put you know, like you would do with a sponge, you put the right colors on these layers, and so you can have a sort of realistic feeling within all the images. So the characters are treated a little bit less, you know, with not so much structure. and so you can still have a good readability on the images, I hope.
Mm-hmm. Of course,
it's a bit like animation, I think. Huh?
It's coming from. I work a lot for animation, so this comes from this work, and but you know, also in the traditional animation, you still had the lines around the characters, and it was very interesting to see that it can work totally without the line, and still like the result.
Yeah,
I remember Tommy and I did a lot of years ago a comic book together where he was drawing in a classical ink. He inked his drawings, and I had the job to color it. And so very traditional French kind of look. And back then there was a panel where he drew a scene in a garden where he wanted to have the light to
the flimmering light coming through the trees, you know?
Softening the edges of a frame. And we tried to have this with this brutal ink, you know, and stretching it away to have these sunbeams coming
water.
Yeah, so it was I think that was one of the key where the later losing the line, he got to that point that he said, why do I have to battle the line with light all the time? Let's just lose the line, and the light can be everywhere. And
in the days of working on computer, of course, you could also color the line now, but I think it's if you see one image from Gung Ho, this is really what we wanted to have. If you see one image of Gung Ho, you immediately you see, well, this only can be Gung Ho because it's so outstanding from all the other works on the French market. So, and this is what the best you can achieve, and
to have a look which is easily recognizable. Yeah.
It's absolutely unique. I agree. For which animation did you work?
There are different animations. I was working a lot here in Germany. I was working for a studio called Trickster. They were working on Hexe Lily, like this. This have been live action movies, and I was working for the design for the paintings for the animation, how do you say, opening titles. And then I was working, in the meantime, I was working on visual development for Pixar and for Leica, and but I cannot tell the projects yet because they are not yet, you know, they still in development. And also I was working for a studio called Blur in LA. It was in 2008. They were working on a third heavy metal. They were planning a third heavy metal movie. I was working on that. So yeah, on different types of animation projects.
But they're still planning.
Every project you worked on was still in development or was tanked somehow.
Sounds.
It happens a lot if you have pre-visualization that at a certain point they decide whether they can finance it or not, and often most of the time it doesn't happen. So. You don't see your work all the time in the movie.
Back to Gung Ho and your art style. I guess it was very much of experimenting in the beginning to figure out the way to go.
I was working before Gung Ho. I was working on another comic book story called on English. The Chronics of the Immortals, and it was a dark fantasy story. And within this project, there has been a lot of process, and I think in the end, I was nearly coming to this point of the style of Gung Ho. It was just a little jump to do it like in Gung Ho in the end. But the progress was in this project, and Gung Ho was completely different, of course, in terms of color and also the characters and the stylization. You say stylization, yeah.
It's understandable, I guess.
Yeah, it was a little bit different, but the one was leading to the other.
I think in the beginning we had, like you said, a little back and forth about deciding what's the right style for the story. And Tommy's first approach was Tommy always looking for simplicity and stylization, and he did some character lines which was even more like animation with more extreme proportions of the bodies and stuff like that. We were talking about it, and I asked him to do the proportions more realistically. They're still stylized, but to have the realistic proportions, because I thought it's fitting better to the tone of the story, because the humans behave very realistic in Gung Ho.
Yeah, and that's a that's the most interesting process when you're developing a project, is like to really support the tone of the story with the visual style. And that was in the beginning. I think we had 2 or 3 months where we really developed the style, and we developed the world, because Benjamin was writing the whole story in once, So we as I started, I knew that in the end we will have this scene. So I knew we will need this in this location. And so we could develop everything from the beginning, and that was a very comfortable thing for us.
Mm. And I watched the other interview of you on the German channel I Am Nerd, or however it's called, and there you said that you developed the concept before the Walking Dead craze. And so how do you feel about The Walking Dead? Does it help being a bit similar on a very superficial level to your story? Or
I think we are like in the same genre, but with totally different approaches.
Yeah.
And I think the problem with Walking Dead is I enjoyed it very much to read it. I like Walking Dead. The comics also, I think the comics are better than the TV series, more consistent. I think the TV series started very, very well, and in the end it dropped in quality a lot. But I think the comic book.
Carl, have you seen that?
And but the problem is, like, Walking Dead is like it sucks up every other story in the zombie genre, because it's so long and there's so much going on. All the ideas Robert Kirkman developed, you can't do anything now in that genre without having the feeling it's already done. So it became the definitive milestone of zombie. Before, you could have a zombie story and totally different approaches and could still be fresh, but now I have the feeling it's almost impossible. It's done to the death in a way. But that's, of course, good for them. It's just for and the comparison between Gung Ho and The Walking Dead, we had this a lot of times, and I think that it's a totally different kind of animal in atmosphere, in approach, and it's also not so dark and grim like The Walking Dead. I think it's not too comparable. The only thing is you have some kind of genre typical coincidences. Maybe in a way like this kind of fortified village and the danger out there, but that's about it. I think.
Yeah. It's somehow the same genre, but nothing more to it. I agree.
I mean, you could never do a Western because they have hats and guns and horses and that other flick too. I mean, it's still can be very different, and so. And our publisher Ablaze in the US market, before we were introduced to each other, that was something our French publisher managed. They already had this kind of marketing approach that gung ho is the new Walking Dead. Mm-hmm. And if we had known early on, we would never have. We don't think that it's a fitting approach to gung ho. I think you have the wrong expectations with that kind of comparison, but it's like it is. Maybe it helps. I don't know. In the market, but.
How do you feel about the American publication in comic book series? You shown me before the stack of comic books from.
Yeah, we have a trade paperback of the first 2 German books, and in hardcover, and then there are a lot of course, the single issues who come out month by month, and there's a lot of variant covers from a lot of different artists. So. I like it. I think it's great to have the American. Sorry, it's the American market. They are used to this kind of publication rhythm, and I think it's good to do it like that. Of course, the pages are much smaller than in the original version, and so maybe that's not the best way to present the high detailed paintings of Tommy, but I think it's better than to have a beautiful big book that nobody reads. So
it's interesting that it still works pretty well, even in the small size. I think you still can. Of course, there are a lot of details, but
wait, yeah.
I think still the images have a good readability, and that shows me that this style really is working. It's really interesting for me.
Yeah, I can see that this works, but in a way, a lot is maybe lost of all the details, because I really like to look at all the tiny details that you put into each panel.
Maybe our publisher he will do in the end a book altogether in bigger size. Who knows? Could be nice.
Yeah, but I think we have a bigger version even in France. We have the normal album size, and then they have a much bigger special deluxe edition, and so people can really digest the pictures and big. But the problem is people also, they think in how can I store my comic books in my bookshelf. And for them, it's not practical. If you normally are a collector in the US, and you have this little format, and then you have this oversized monstrum, and people sometimes it's like that. They don't buy it because they don't know where to store it. So
yeah, they have these long boxes and short boxes and so on. I've learned about it over the run of my channel, because they have problems that I don't have, and otherwise vice versa.
A good thing for our bigger size deluxe books is that the French publisher now, he's doing a really massive box, which is has a very nice design, so you can put it on top of the shelf. And you
Sounds
can
great.
also throw it to the head of an intruder if you want to use it.
It must be very heavy. I think it must be. I don't know. It will be between 5 and 10 kilos or something.
Yeah, I have something similar stuff here around me, but yeah, this would be great with gung ho as well. Just a short question to the art, because your coloring strikes me as pretty exceptional as well, and some of the lighting, and it has a really painterly feel to it. Did you have some models, idols, Vorbilder?
Well, yeah, of course. I love all the impressionists and all the realist painters like Singer Sargent or wer ist der Spanier? Sorolla, for example. And of course, I do a lot of, I see, since I'm painting, I see the world a little different. So if I do a lot of urban sketching, for example. If I go on vacation, I always have my colors with me, and there you can study everything. So because you never can see the light sources on a photograph, because you don't see, oh, why is there an orange in this shadow? It's because of, it's a bouncing light from there and stuff. So I do a lot of studying in real nature, and also I'm surrounded by other artists, and we are talking a lot about these things. And well, I need it because I'm an illustrator, so this is I'm very interested into that question. Colors, of course.
The most one little nitpicking I had with the story, because the danger of all this world are these creatures. I don't know if they are bears or monkeys or something in the middle of it. Mutant animals, almost an abstract. They're white, and so it's the contrast between the world and them is the biggest of all. But it seems not enough to really get humankind on its knees, humanity on its knees.
Well, the point is that maybe they don't bring humanity to their knees. The story takes place in the process of the battle between humanity and these animals. And of course, it's bullshit. It's something you have to believe. Like, you have to believe that dead people can walk, or that wizards can do magic or something like that. You have to believe that to enjoy the story. But I thought about it nonetheless, and I thought, if it is possible that somehow these new species is like an evolutionary jump maybe in Siberia or something, where not so many people live, and they can develop, and if there's enough of them, they intrude in the humans world, and bit by bit take them apart. And the thinking was that most animals, predators, real predators, they don't hunt humans. It's more of an anomaly that you have a man-eating tiger or whatever. And if they do, they are really dangerous, and they can cause a lot of problems, because the problem is to find them. They hunt and they disappear. So I thought, let's take that and make it a few thousands of them. And now think you are a little French village, people living their normal life, and 1,000 hungry tigers come to the village, hunting, specifically hunting for them. So, okay, in America, everybody has a gun in his house or something, but in Europe, it's not like that. And people would have been totally, they don't have a chance, And of course, what is about the military, I thought. Okay, but the Rippers, they function in a kind of, I didn't put that in the story yet, but the thinking was they can group together for a mass attack, but if there is a lot of force against them, like with weapons or with helicopters and shootings, they can just spread out and disappear in the woods, So it's of course they can shoot a few of them, but they can't just drop a bomb and that's it, because they just go and flee and regroup later. So I think it could be really a bitch to get them. And you don't want to bomb your own country with atomic bombs or something. So you have to, And what they would do is, if they hunt in the landscapes, I think that the farmers couldn't do their farming without a lot of danger. And so they would, we saw that in the Corona pandemic also, in a way, that the kind of chains of how do you call that, Lieferketten,
supply chains,
supply chains. If you have a great danger, they would be interrupted very, very, very fast. And if you can't buy your daily food at the supermarket, a few days later you have a lot of problems, and the hospitals, and you would have hunger, and you would have sickness and diseases. So I think the most people would die not by the Rippers, but by the interruption of these chains of supply. But still, of course, it's mumbo jumbo, and you have to believe it in a way.
Maybe short before the Rippers came, you have a huge hacker attack, you know, so nothing is functional at all.
Yeah, and it's not the focus of your story, I mean, the clever thing. Yeah, sorry.
The purpose was not to tell a story where the question is, where do the Rippers come from, and where is that secret lab in the underground where I have to push the red button to destroy all Rippers, you know, and that's the quest of the heroes to find out and to save humanity. It's not about that. I was really interested only in the dynamics of the humans under pressure in the situation.
Mm. And that's so realistically told that maybe because of that, it really stands out that the Rippers are not so real like all the rest of the characters, the teenagers and all the conflicts.
Yeah, the concept was in a way to have this kind of cheesy B-picture set up with the Rippers. Mm-hmm. And this kind of frame, yeah, but in this kind of frame to tell a realistic drama. Mm-hmm. And I personally, I like this kind of movies where you have a genre movie, but who takes his shit seriously and trying to do something good in these parameters. Mm. Yeah, I like that contrast.
You worked quite a while on Gung Ho. When did you start it?
Well, it was in 2011 we started. Mm. So it's well, Benjamin had the idea earlier, much earlier, and but
I had the idea.
Yeah, 2005.
Time, I think when the first issues of Walking Dead came out. But
yeah. And he was telling me this idea of this story. We have been on a signing trip in France, and we were sitting in the plane, and he was telling me this story, and he had another opening sequence. And I was totally excited about this idea, but back then I still worked on this Chronics of the Immortals, and after I finished the second book there, we told our publisher that we don't want to work on this story anymore, and he asked us, okay, what do you want to do? And then we showed him this idea. I think I made already also 2 or 3 illustrations for that. Yeah. So we can have a nice pitch for him, and he liked it immediately. And from there, Benjamin could start writing.
Yeah, and I think there's a story at that point. I just had the idea and the world and the rules.
Yeah,
but I didn't have a plot or specific characters. But it was enough to persuade our.
You didn't even have the 2 brothers, right? It was not clear that not you were
really.
2 brothers.
I knew early on that I needed a reason for Zach to go into the danger zone, and my first idea was that his older brother vanished into the danger zone, and he always thinks about him, wondering if he's alive or not, and that one day he goes out there to search for his brother. That was the first idea, but it changed in the writing process. But it was really after the handshake with the publisher, and that we will do that I was sitting down and looking at my little notes I did over the years. It was like 6 years of thinking in the back of my head about it a little bit. So I sat down and developed the plot and the characters from there on. And it took me 11 months to write the whole story, all 5 books. And in that time, Tommy finished the other book and started, when I was finishing the last third of my writing process, he could already start with characters and locations and drawing out the style and stuff like that. And from that on, I think it was about 10 years from
around 10 years, yeah.
Oh yeah, so 10 years.
Each book is the French version. Each book is 80 pages, which is pages wise as much as 2 books. So for one book, I took 2 years. So it was a regular thing. The last book has 100 pages, so it took a little longer, but altogether around 10 years. which is a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's mind-boggling for American or so cartoonists who churn out each month a comic that is sometimes a bit rushed. And with your comics, it really shows that you put a lot of effort and time. You had time
it's kind of different, right? Because I think in America they are very much used to work in teams. Like you have the penciler, you have the inker, and you have the color guy. So it's different. You can be much faster, and to do everything on your own, it's of course, it takes longer.
Yeah, but I think it's brutal to have these monthly deadlines.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
I admire all artists who can work under that circumstances and still to do good work and really hard work. And a lot of them are very, very good. And I look at the pages and I think, wow, how did they do that in that time? Of course, you always had other books where maybe look more like, okay, you see that it's have to be fast. But I think the best artists under these circumstances, they try to do a favor out of the little time they have and to synthesize and to be effective and in the hands of the right artist, it can be beautiful. And you have this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of much of these works. But as you said it, you had the time to rethink the beginning of Gung Ho, and so I thought the start in which we figure out about the settlement together with the main protagonists, that was a very neat idea to do so. So
it's a pretty conventional idea. I think it's not the new invention of the wheel.
No. Yeah.
But of course, that was the thing I was thinking about. And I would have had a very strong opening scene, the one I told Tommy before I had the story. But I had the idea for an opening scene which I liked. Where it starts like a normal morning of the protagonist having to go to school for a very important exam. So that's what the kind of dynamic in his family in the morning table at the breakfast, and then they move through the village to the school. And on that way, you realize as a reader that it's a strange surrounding, people going on the streets with weapons. You have these high posts on the normal buildings where they can retreat if the rippers come into town and stuff like that. And in the end, you have this kind of test in the school where they have to fight against a captured ripper to get some kind of license to go out in the danger zone. You know, it's like a ritual for them when they are 16. So that would have been a very nice opening scene, I think. But the problem was that if you have a protagonist who lives there forever, raised in these circumstances, you have no need to explain the rules and the world, and it would be much more difficult as a writer to write scenes without having this kind of he's telling that scene only because the reader has to know something, you know, and you want to avoid that. So I thought it's better to have to start with new members of the society, and they have to explain the rules to them. So it's more natural. Yeah.
What is a little bit new, I think, in this settlement is the fact that it's somewhere in south of Europe. So you have this old village on the top of this hill, and you have sort of you have this camping van, and you have and all is surrounded by this lake, and you have a sea bath. Sag mal so, sea bath.
Yeah.
And it's within the settlement. It's a sort of as we're telling it a little bit as a vacation atmosphere in a way, you know, for the teenagers to feel all the romantic feelings and being teenagers there.
Did you write it first in French?
No, I can't. No. I had French for 3 years in school, and that's
okay. Like
would have taken longer.
No, I write in German, and it's translated into other languages then.
But it was first published in French.
Yes.
Yeah. And the Germans in Germany is buying the license,
Yes.
But they don't need to pay the translator because it's already there in German.
And it has been translated into Dutch, and in which other languages do you know of?
It was the first book was translated in Spain.
Spanish.
And the first book was published there at the publisher D-Books. But D-Books then was absorbed by a big how to say
company.
By a big company, yes, and so the big company was looking only on the cells, you know, and gung ho was totally fresh, so the cells have been not there, so they decided to put it away, to drop it. So I think that we will have a new publisher, hopefully, for Spain. Then now we got the news that it's translated. It will be translated in Croatia. So and also I know that Italy is interested. Yeah.
Now that the story is complete, maybe we have some more.
Yeah.
Countries, because the problem always with these long series is that they normally tend to wait because they don't know if the series goes until the end, and they don't want to be stuck with 2 books and no end. And so I think, it's like that. Strangely, we once got the 3rd place of a manga prize, an important manga prize in Japan, but it's not published in Japan, so. It would be nice. Not yet, yeah, but let's see how it goes.
Interesting. Yeah, you had this ending here in volume 4. The final will arrive in 2021, and the character says, hopefully. So you really were afraid at that time that you won't be able to finish it, or?
Well, within this process, I had a lot of requests to work on different projects, and so you never know if that interrupts the work so much. But I'm happy we were able to hold this date.
It was also a little joke because our first better known project was like the Chronicles of the Immortals. The first book came out and made quite a splash in the German comic market and also in the French market. And then 7 years went by until the second part was published, because Tommy wasn't paid enough money to work regularly on it, so he had to do other jobs, and so we had that image, I think, that you never know if the next book is coming, So that was a little joke also about that.
Yeah. Speaking of other projects, you have a Batman story in this year. Can you talk about?
It's a short story, not a whole book, but it's a project by DC. It will come out in September, and it's titled Batman: The World, and there are 14 countries. Every country has one team or one artist to make a 10-page story. With Batman.
To bring Batman in their own country.
Yeah. So that was the condition that the Batman story we had to do should take place in Germany. I think it was more like to internationalize the character and to show that it makes sense. I mean, Marvel and all these and DC, they have characters known all around the world, and I think they want to acknowledge that. But and also, it's a good way to maybe find new talents. I don't know if that's what they're thinking, because
hopefully.
I mean, they always did that in movies and in comic books. They always had artists from other countries working for them, and I think that worked very well for them, because they get the best talent from all over the world, and smart move.
Have you done it in the same art style? Yes, in the end it was the same art style, because well, of course it's different than gung ho, but still the same style in a way. I was planning to do a nice aquarelles, you know. But I was planning. We were talking about, you know, story-wise, what can we do, and maybe Benjamin in the beginning was thinking about maybe we have an inner monologue of Batman, and so I can have nice big images with a little text, you know. But in the end, it was very much text and very much story, so I had to
it's always images. Like, I thought in the beginning, okay, 10 pages is not very much to do anything, you know, to have a story.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit afraid by that, and the first idea was kind of to have not Batman having that monologue with another character, and Batman is kind of the dark force from outside, and in Germany he's not known as he's known in America, so it's maybe a fresher impression on the guy meeting him in the woods somewhere in Bavaria or something. But when you start thinking about plot and story, it gets very, very fast, very much more complicated, and so that changed a lot, and poor Tommy had to cram a lot of story in these little pages, and I had to shorten it down also very much. And yeah, it's difficult to do 10 pages.
It's very difficult, yeah.
So yeah, in the end it was the same style, because you can have smaller images, you know, on computer it's okay. With aquarelle it's not, it can't breathe in the end.
Mm. One question that I've forgot to ask you earlier is, do you read comics by yourself, and which one?
Yeah, of course, I'm reading from time to time. Well, I'm not a big comic reader, but in the beginning, I was reading a lot the French comic books. Not so much the American comic books, I have to admit. That came later, and I found Mike Mignola, of course, for example, and also the Batman stories and stuff. But my interest for comics came from a comic book called Peter Pan from the French artist Régis Loisel, and he was, yes. It's a sort of adult version for on this character, and I love what he's doing in terms of layout and storytelling and drawing. It's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that makes me want to tell also stories in this medium. Yeah, it's beautiful.
To me, it also was a mixture, and I very much liked also the American comic books, especially what Vertigo did in the 90s. And also, when I started reading the adult comic books, beginning of the 90s, there was Vertigo titles, and Frank Miller also with Sin City was very fresh for me back then, and with Dark Knight Returns, and now I like also these kind of long series like 100 Bullets by Azzarello and Risso, and I like the Punisher Max also, especially from the artists Goran Parlov and Garth Ennis. Garth Ennis is a very good writer, I think. Yeah, so there are a lot of interesting American books outside the superhero arena, and of course the French and Belgian and sometimes a little bit of from Asia, but mostly European and American comics.
Interesting. Okay, and now it's back to illustration, or do you have and your other works, and take a break, or do you have some new project in mind to do some new comic afterwards?
Benjamin?
Yeah, I have several projects in mind, and I'm working right now on a two-shot story with a French artist, Olivier Dauger. And after that, I have a lot of other projects I want to write. And but I don't know right now. I'm not in the position to work all the time as much as I want, because I have to take care about kids with school and a new dog. Yeah, but and also with the Corona year was strange, because I had to be at home for them with homeschooling, so it pretty much slowed me down very much. But now when the school is normal again, hopefully, and it stays like that, I'm planning to only write. I'm an illustrator too. For all my life, I was earning my money with illustration, and now I would like to jump only to writing, just for to get the ideas out of my head.
And Thomas, you?
For me now, it's a little bit the time to to sit back and start breathing different other things, because 10 years of work on this one project was a long time, and I had to really put on the sag mal da, Scheuklappen, like horses,
Yeah.
So in the meantime, there was a huge development within the movie industry. Like all the concept artists now, they are working with 3D programs, and I have to catch up with this development. And I want to do this, and maybe work for some movie projects, and also thinking about own stories, and who knows, I don't say I won't do a comic anymore, but for the moment I'm quite happy, and try to find out what I want to do next.
Yeah, very understandable. Okay, I think I have all my questions been answered, and thanks for coming on my show, and
thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It was a very nice talk.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.